And it says we're live, but I don't know if it's recording. How do you tell if it's recording?
So I think that you can, I think it stays in the system as recorded. Like
Okay.
when you go back onto the main platform, you can pull up your previous videos and download them.
I'm such a novice at all this, but welcome to Book Chat with Julie. I'm so excited to be here with Heather B. Moore, one of my favorite authors. I think I've read all of her books, or at least most of them. I've read a lot of books. But today we're going to be talking about Just Add Romance, the Everly Falls series, and it's #1. This is a re-release, though, because originally, was it a novella in a collection?
So yeah, I mean, the size hadn't changed, but it was in what's called the Hidden Hollows collection with 5 other authors. So we each wrote a different character in the world that we created. And it came out a couple years ago, and then our contract was that we would get our rights back. So I had to change the connecting characters' names, not my main characters, and the series title, and then the name of the town.
Okay, that makes sense. And so I really thought Everly Falls it felt so real. Did you research that, like with a small town? Is it based on something?
So we all kind of decided we were going to write in the same area. And it was kind of like a North Carolina town, and not necessarily a specific town, but we decided, how far will it be from the beach? What are some of the features there? So we definitely were like, each of us were just writing things down that would be part of the town. And so it was kind of, everything was similar to one of the small towns in the area.
Okay, that makes sense. So you collaborated with the other authors, but now you're going on your own and Everly Falls is yours.
Right.
Okay. So will these 2 characters of Everly and Austin appear in subsequent books in the series?
Yeah, so my idea is Everly has a sister, and to maybe the second book be her sister, and there's some other people that are kind of planted in the story as well. That could be potential books as well. But I think the main characters will continue to be in little cameo appearances.
I love that. I love their story. Well, and it just had so much heart in it with, what's going on with Austin and losing his wife. And they both have these mother issues. I mean, without giving away any spoilers, there just was a lot of heart to the story. I mean, did you have a favorite scene that you liked?
I really actually just like the scenes in the theater. And I don't even remember exactly how I came up with that idea, except for I have a niece that renovated a movie theater in Vernal, Utah, which is kind of a smaller town in Utah, and she changed it into a playhouse. And not that this was going to be moved into a playhouse in the story, because it's just a regular theater renovation, but it just sort of just the whole process of it kind of was a springboard into this idea. And so I love what Austin ends up doing to the theater and making it more nostalgic for the whole town.
I did too. I mean, he just had such a great personality, and he was good at what he did, but he still took into account how it affected everybody else, especially Everly.
Yeah.
Such a great book, such a great story. Did anyone, Mara and Lynette, if you have any questions, just jump right in, okay? Now, I want to go back and read your biography because it's one of my favorite author bios. I wish could be you. Heather B. Moore is a USA Today bestselling author of more than 70 publications. You have 70 books out now, or is it more?
It's more. I think 70 is, it kind of shows the breadth, but doesn't intimidate.
Yeah. Her historical novels and thrillers are written under pen name H.B. Moore. She writes women's fiction, romance, and inspirational nonfiction under Heather B. Moore. This can all be confusing, so her kids just call her mom, which I think is so cute. Heather attended Cairo American College in Egypt, the Anglican School of Jerusalem in Israel, and earned a Bachelor of Science degree from Brigham Young University in Utah. Heather is represented by Distil, Goderich, and Bourret. Did I say that right?
Well, I think that's very good.
Close enough, right? Close enough. Anyway, so tell me a little bit about your creative nonfiction. I know, well, you did the Paper Daughters of Chinatown, and then you did one that just won Best of State, who the title is escaping me.
Oh, the Slow March of Light.
The Slow March of Light, that's right. And what one is coming up next? I know you have one coming out. Is it the end of this year?
So I have one coming out on October 4th, and it's called In the Shadow of a Queen. And it's based on Queen Victoria and her daughter, Princess Louise, who was her fourth daughter and fifth child, I think, or sixth child. Sorry. I know this, but you know when you've been writing about something else all day long.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a story about soon after Prince Albert dies, and that really changes the whole family dynamics. It changes the reign of Queen Victoria and how it affected Princess Louise. And the reason a lot of people say, well, why did you pick her? There's 9 children. I said, mostly because she kind of was kind of a rebel princess. So she went to public art school. She wanted to be a sculptress. She didn't really have a lot of confidence in her art, even though she loved art, because her art masters would say, you're wonderful, you're talented, but she was a princess and they were hired to teach her. So of course they're going to tell her that. And so she kind of had a battle with that a little bit. And she really wanted to become known as one of the greats. And she also ran out of royalty to marry, or that was, I guess, well matched to her. And so she was allowed to marry a commoner, which was the first time in over 300 years that any royal member of the British monarchy married a commoner. And so this was, Queen Victoria approved it, but that didn't mean that her siblings, who were married to very influential people all over the world, were happy about it. So it was kind of a big family deal in her life. And she kind of just went through a lot of different things. And she's a very relatable person. She was very beautiful. She was said to be the most beautiful daughter of Queen Victoria, but that also presented a lot of expectations on her. And it's interesting how we look at other people, think, oh, they're so talented, or they have so many gifts, or they're so amazing, but yet sometimes that turns into a burden as well.
Yeah, and especially being a woman and wanting to be a sculptress, when women back in those days, that wasn't considered, appropriate.
Yeah. So what women could sculpt were babies and animals and nature. They could not sculpt. They had in the art school she went to, the men could sculpt bodies, and the women were separated and could sculpt plants and animals.
Wow. I don't know. I kind of love the time period, but at the same time, I don't love the politicalness and where women's rights were at that time.
Yeah.
But,
Oh, for real. And just because we're on that topic, so Princess Louise was very much an advocate of women's rights, and her mother was not, for a long time. In fact, this created a lot of conflict between them, because Princess Louise would try to advocate for different causes, because if you had a member of the royal family say, I support your cause, and that can bring in more fundraising and donations and more recognition to that support. And one time, Princess Louise sneaked out of the palace, which isn't exactly possible, but she was obviously with another lady, and I guess they must have, and the coachman was taking them someplace. And then she said, stop right here. And she went and knocked on the door of a female doctor in England who was educated in France, because at that time they did not train female doctors in England. And she just walked in her house, and she just wanted to know all about it. And of course, she swore everyone to secrecy, but Queen Victoria finds out everything. So Queen Victoria found out. And I think Louise was about 21 or 22 at this time. And Queen Victoria and her sisters had gotten married a lot younger. And Queen Victoria said, that's it. You are getting married. So that's when the true process started to find her husband.
how did they find the commoner?
So he was actually a duke he was a marquess at the time, because he was going to inherit the dukedom, but from Scotland. And so they wanted him to be of a good family and to agreed to live in England. That was the other thing, is some of the other princes in Germany or other countries, they did not want to come and live in England because they obviously are going to inherit their own thrones in their own countries. And also someone that Queen Victoria didn't have previous issues with in the family, which happened a lot because Queen Victoria was very particular in her beliefs and her traditions. And so if someone went outside the lines, she kind of put them on her blacklist.
Interesting. So he technically wasn't a real commoner.
Right. He wasn't, but he never did join the peerage. He never did take an English title. And that was a conflict many times throughout the marriage between him and Louise and the Queen, is she thought it would be just easier if he took on a British title of pretty much like being a duke or anything in England, but he wouldn't. He stuck to Scotland.
Interesting. Do you think it was a love match?
I think it was as much. I think it was as far as it wasn't love at first sight, because they actually knew each other for quite a while. Their families knew each other for a long time, but their interactions spanned several years. And she was interested in some other men that were British dukes and different titles, and then something would go wrong. So it wasn't necessarily the one that she had stars in her eyes for at the beginning, but then as she kind of weeded other men out, she realized that he had the qualities that she was looking for. Kind of more of a mature relationship than just the Disneyland fairy tale relationship.
Interesting. I can't wait to read this one. It sounds so good. Did you have to do a ton of research? I'm sure you did.
Yeah. So this book took me basically 6 months from start to finish, and only working on this book. Not a lot of times, but sometimes I could be working on a project and then I'm able to kind of squeeze something else in, like maybe a novella, or I go back to editing something else. And this one, I actually did not do any new writing on any other project. And part of that was because I felt kind of the weight of knowing there's a lot written about the royal family. And I had, I think, 8 or 9 biographies I read. I think 4 are on Princess Louise, and I read them on Victoria, and then a couple on her siblings. And so I wanted to go through and make sure I was cross-referencing and covering all the points. And so I don't know. I feel like I read like maybe 3 or 4 of the books, and they're long. They're like thick books, like 600 pages. And so I feel like I had read and annotated several of the books before I started the writing, and then I was continually still reading and researching.
Wow. Would you say you've done more research for like your books like these, or for your more spiritual scripture fiction? How do you say that? Are we scripture?
I feel like I think scripture fiction is a good way. I think with scripture fiction, there's a lot less to research. And part of that is because you have different scholars that kind of believe different things. And so you kind of find the path that you're going to follow. And so then your research becomes a lot less. And I try not to go down too many strange rabbit holes. Like I try to just take more the general viewpoint of what most religions will believe in about what happened to a person in the scriptures. And I try not to get too deep into the doctrine, because I think it sometimes takes away from the story. So I have it's a 2-book set. It's called The Legend of the Jews. And it's really interesting because it talks about some of the really deep basis for some of the beliefs from the Jewish religion. But there's such an outlier than what the Christian view of the Bible is. So I would read things, I'm like, well, I can't use that, I can't use this, I can't use this. And so when you're staying more with a broad theme, then actually there's not a lot of research, because there is debate on what happened back then. But with Queen Victoria, I mean, we have people that wrote about her while she was alive. You have thousands of her letters, I don't know, like 12 diaries or something that are, of course, are all edited and cut apart, but there's a lot of material there.
I know you do a lot of research for, all of your books. What would you say is the most strange thing you've come across in your research?
Oh, well, just because I brought up the Legend of the Jews, I can talk about that. So, for those who know the story of Moses and how the Pharaoh wanted to put all Hebrew males to death. So, one of the legends is that the Hebrew mothers buried their babies in the field and used reeds, put reeds in their mouth so they could go up through the dirt and still get oxygen. And they hid their babies from the Pharaoh.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's something I didn't use in my books.
Yeah, I've never even heard that before. That's wow. I can't imagine doing that. Hmm. Well, Mara says Heather's one of my top 5 favorite authors. I love all her books, and I can't wait to read about her. I'm sure she meant the Cash Out of the Queen. And Lynette said, Heather, do you ever have time to read for fun or only for research?
So that's a very good question, because before I ever started writing, I was a big reader, and I'm still a big reader. But and for me, research is more like part of the job. So I try not to do research when my work is done for the day. After I get my word count, and I kind of, whatever my word count is, and whatever that includes in research, that's part of the package. So I'm not like getting my word count done by 2, and then from 2 to 6, I'm researching. And so that's why I kind of divide it up as far as our research for like 3 or 4 weeks only. Then I start writing, but then now my writing time has to include any new research. So obviously I'm a novelist, so this answer is going to be long. So yeah, so then that gives me more free time. Nothing's ever free, but when I'm driving or just cleaning my house or doing laundry, I always have an audiobook on almost all the time. And so I love audio because it allows me to multitask. Otherwise, I do have a Kindle and I'll read at night. Or sometimes if I wake up in the middle of the night and I can't sleep, I'll be like, oh, I'll just read a couple chapters and then fall back asleep again. And but I absolutely love, I probably read more, but I read a lot of historical. I have just like Julie Blunt, like I have, we've been author friends for a long time. So I'm always looking, oh, what does my friend have coming out? I can trust it's going to be clean. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a great read. And so there's some authors I just trust where I can just grab their new release if I'm looking for a book. And that way, I don't know, to me, research is work, and we all need playtime.
Exactly. Well, now I have to ask, what are you reading right now?
So okay. So right now my audio, I can pull up what it is.
Lynette loves audio too. And Mara.
Yeah. And then I also start following narrators sometimes. Sometimes if I just love a narrator, then I go and see what else they've narrated. So right now my audio is the Songbook of Benny Lament by Amy Harmon. Don't give any spoilers. I think I'm almost to the end of the book. I'm like on the second to last chapter. And then I have a book that what was it? Oh, I started a book called Downstairs Girl. And I got about 2 chapters into it. And for whatever reason, like sometimes I can't focus just on the genre. I'm like, so that's a book I'm just going to come back to. And then I also just bought The Audacity of Sarah Grayson by Joni Elliott because she beat me out in the Whitney Awards. So I'm like, wow, must be a fantastic book. I better read it.
My sister-in-law is married to Joni Elliott's brother.
Oh,
So
wow.
we had a little family connection there, and I was so excited for her to win.
Yeah,
But
she's at my table, so I got to meet her, and she's like super sweet. And
yeah,
and the book trailer looked really fun, and I thought that's definitely in the cover. Like you see the cover, like, oh, I got to pick up that book. So
yeah,
that's my next reading. That's my next book to read.
and what an interesting premise too of that book. I haven't read it yet, but it's on my list.
Yeah.
Nancy Peterson is Lynette's favorite narrator.
Oh yeah, I've used her a few times. So I sometimes when I indie publish a book, I'll also do the audio. So I hire a narrator. So Nancy has done 3 of my books. She did my book on Eve and Adam. And oh, that was really cool because her husband, he's in the film industry. He's not necessarily a narrator, but he's a creative artist. And so he read Adam and Nancy read Eve. So I thought that just brought a special dimension because husband and wife are reading husband and wife.
Yeah, that is cool.
And then she also did my book, Condemn Me Not, which is a book about my 10th great grandmother who was accused of witchcraft during the Salem witch trials. And she did an amazing job because that book is 2 timelines, and she read as an older woman and then as a younger woman, and she did excellent. And that book was actually up for an audio award. We didn't win, but it was fun to be nominated. And then just this, I think it was earlier this year, she narrated a book I self-published called The Healing Summer. And it's about a road trip between a 90-year-old and a 40-year-old, and they go on a road trip to find clues to the older woman's past. And so it's just kind of like a women's novel that is a fun adventure, but there's a lot of inspiration in there too.
You just write in so many genres. Do you have a favorite genre, really?
I really do like historical, and I really do like biblical because I feel like there's so much missing there. And even though I'm a pantser, which means that I don't necessarily always know where the plot's going to go or what the next scene is going to be or what characters will pop up, writing biblical fiction does give me a framework. And plus, if you're religious, then you believe it's true. And so it just makes it more fascinating that something like that happened. And so you're kind of reinventing maybe what happened around those scenes.
Sure. Do you still use your dad as a resource?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember if he read my so I have a book on Hannah coming out next month. I'm trying to remember if I had him read that one or not. But he definitely gets emails and texts. Now he texts. So sometimes he'll get texts from me with questions.
Wow, he's texting?
Yep.
Oh, that's cute. Well, coming back to Just Add Romance, so let me just ask you, are Everly and Austin based on real people, or did it just come right out of your imagination?
Well, I think that every character I write has some things that are based on real people. And I feel like Everly's personality, just being creative, but just at a point in her life where she's happy where she is in life, but there's all these expectations because now she's approached, I think I have her close to 30. So yeah. I feel like there's expectations from her mother. You need to find a stable man. There's expectations from just her own self, her own perceptions of life.
Yeah.
And so I have a couple daughters. I have 3 daughters, but one is 25, one is 22. And I've seen them just go through that stage the last couple years of what do I really want to do in life? Who do I really want to date? Like those kinds of questions. Mm-hmm. And so not that it's based on my daughters, but it's based on those ideas of when you're trying to, you kind of got through the young adult stage in life. And now you find yourself knowing that the decisions you make can really change the course.
Yeah. I'm kind of seeing a little parallel between Everly and Princess Louise with the mom issues and the expectations. Mm-hmm. And I mean, were you editing those two together by any chance?
No. So I had this. So Just Add Romance came out 2 years ago. So I had been writing 6 months before that. And so I wrote Princess Louise after. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that obviously they kind of both have some of those parallels as well as, whatever your opportunities are or your life has been so far, what do you now want the rest of your life to look like?
Mm-hmm. I mean, are you finding in your research for your nonfiction or creative nonfiction that it's paralleling, fiction stories, like life following art? Is that what it is?
I think sometimes that happens for sure. I remember when I was researching for Paper Daughters of Chinatown, and this is human trafficking in early 1900s San Francisco, but yet in the news around me and the world around me, I was seeing the same problems happening over and over. And so it's just interesting but obviously I was more aware of it, and I had educated myself, and I was looking for ways to be more of an advocate, to stop human trafficking. And so I think that whatever, sometimes when I'm researching or writing something, all of a sudden that's where my focus becomes. And so then I become aware, and the universe kind of does that to you, I think, is when you're ready to learn and have those answers, that's when you can find them.
Do you think you're going to redo any of your other novellas into other series, or just concentrate on Everly Falls?
That's a good question. So I have a couple things coming up that are kind of already established. So with my Prosperity Ranch series, which is another small town romance series, so all 5 books are done. Book number 4 will come out in July, and book number 5 is part of a free promotion right now, but that technically won't be for sale until next spring. So, and with Everly Falls, I kind of left it open, where not necessarily how many I would do, but I think sometimes a series needs at least 3 books. So I'd probably do 2 more books in the series, and then just kind of see how that goes.
Yeah. I saw that you just released your Kindle Vella book. What was the name of that one? I can't remember the title.
So that was called The Orphan Circus, and I did that on Kindle Vella when the program just started. And now they're allowing, and I think you have to have it on Kindle Vella for a certain amount of time, and then you can just put it on regular Kindle. So that's what I did. I just put it on regular Kindle, but it is a shorter book, so I don't think I'll do it in paperback. But I left that one open as well for more stories with the characters, and I kind of planted some characters in there too.
Yeah.
And that was really fun to write. It was just, it's more young adult, and it's a totally different voice. It's more of like a historical, this, I don't know how to explain, like his, it's not really, it's not scary, it's not gothic, but it's more of like a circus that maybe there's some stuff going on that's suspicious.
Very mysterious.
Yes.
And that's under your pen name of Jane Red.
Right.
Awesome. Well, I have to ask, because I think one of my very favorite series of yours is Omar Ziguri. And I wonder, are you going to do any more with him, or is he done?
So I do want to write one more book. So what I need to do, though, is for anyone who's read the arc, so Omar and his girlfriend Mia, they have a very volatile relationship. So they break up, they get back together, they break up. So book 4, he proposes, and I'm not going to tell you whether she accepts or not, but I feel like book 5 needs to just tie up their whole relationship. Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of crazy stuff. So honestly, like for me to do it would be just to get through my current deadline right now, and then probably I'd have to listen to, they're all in audio, so I probably just listen to my own books, even on like double speed or something, just to get like back into the world, back into my head, and then come up with kind of a main plot idea, and then just go for it.
Because what are you working on right now?
So I'm working on a novel that is set in the World War II era, and it takes place in Indonesia when the Dutch had occupied Indonesia. And when the Japanese invaded Indonesia, they put all the Dutch people into concentration camps until the end of the war. So I'm writing a story about a woman who, she's still alive. She's in her 80s, and she was a young girl with her family when she was put into one of the camps. So that's what I'm working on. And then I have a couple smaller projects coming up. And so there might be room in there for Omar.
Yay! Mara says yes for Omar. I'm so excited. It's just nice when you find a series you love and a character you really love and think, oh, there's going to be more books.
Yeah, he's awesome.
He is. I was kind of surprised when you first put him out, because he's a little bit edgier than some of your other books, but still love him.
And it kind of went as far as it was just kind of an idea I had, so I started writing it, and I really do like writing thrillers. But I remember when I was working with my agent on some potential projects, she said, you really have like that inspirational, more wholesome, like natural voice. And because I was trying to get another thriller series published, and she said, I would encourage you to kind of stay where you are, over here. And that also kind of led to the projects like Paper Daughters and The Slow March of Light too.
And those are good. I'm not saying they're not good. I just like Omar. So let me ask you this. So if you were talking to someone who had never read any of your books before, which one would you recommend that they start with? Would it be
That's a good question, because a lot of people will ask me that. And I usually just recommend my more recent books, because I know that they're probably, I've grown as a writer, so they're a little more solid as far as books go. So, I mean, I'll recommend, I'll say, so what do you like to read? And if they like to read romance, then I'll ask them historical or contemporary. So I have a couple of those choices. If they are religious, I'll recommend one of my biblical novels. I usually recommend Esther the Queen, because that I just have tons of feedback that people love that book. So it's not necessarily was my favorite book, even though I loved it, but the readers really like it. So I feel confident in that one. Or Ruth, that gets a lot of comments as well. Or otherwise, if they like stuff like World War II fiction, I'll recommend The Slow March of Light, even though that's during the Cold War, which is later. And so it is nice that way to have a variety of genres.
You can pretty much hit any reader, anything a reader loves, and you've written something about it. Do you have a favorite character that you've written, though, that you just would love to come back to sometime?
That's a good question. So when I did write Paper Daughters, I felt like I could write several books on Dolly Cameron, because the first book just takes her up until, she's kind of she becomes a director of the mission home. And so kind of takes her up until she's a new director. And I feel like there could be more volumes in that book, because she spent her entire career working at this mission home. So there's all these amazing experiences she had. But then my publisher asked me to do a young reader's version of the book. So I kind of have gotten to write, even though it's covering the same timeline, I've been able to write another book, and I've co-written that with Alison Hung Merrill, which has been really fun, because she was one of my original beta readers for the original story.
That's awesome. So now you've also collaborated with Angela Eschler on the book, what is it? Far Greater Than Ruby?
So we did Women Who Believe, and that's the most recent one. And then we did another book called Christ's Gifts to Women about 10 years ago.
Okay.
And they're both nonfiction, inspirational.
How is it working with co-authors? Do you love that?
Well, there's mostly pros. There's the very few cons would be just that sometimes I want to be on my own timeline with a co-author. You're working together, which is totally fine. But the nice thing about working with a co-author is it just gives you that synergy and more motivation, because, as you know, being a writer, you're so solitary when you're in your head and writing. And sometimes you're like, oh, I wish I could just bounce this idea off of someone, but then I have to explain this whole thing to them.
Right.
Because they're not part of my project. And with a co-author, though, you're both in the project and you can edit each other. So it just gives you a little bit more confidence to, when you're turning in a project, because you've both gone over it so much. And also it really helps with like marketing after, because you're not always just saying, buy my book. You have, two people that are saying that, two authors, and then you also bring in your other readers and other connections into the promotion.
So do you get together at the start of the project and just kind of lay it out, or do you just talk as you go along?
Well, with this particular project with Angela, our most recent book, is we wanted to kind of pattern it after our first book. So we kind of knew generally like how long it would be and how intensive it would be. But I'm trying to remember if I feel like we either talked on the phone or did Zoom while we kind of like were working on it. And we also have like a shared Google Doc where we would put notes and then we'd comment on each other and go back and forth a lot. And it was interesting because I just said, well, let me just, we talked about it a lot. I said, well, let me write the introduction, and that will just kind of be our framework of how we're going to write our chapters. But by the time you wrote the chapters, we're like, this introduction doesn't work. So it had to be rewritten anyway.
Have you ever had a co-author where you were just like, no, I want it to be this way, and she thought it should be this way, and you're just like maybe butting heads a little bit?
Yeah, I think that happens a little bit with every book I've co-authored, but it's more of what's the give and take. And if it's really important to them, I just think, okay, we're going to go with what they said, because really you're just creating it without anyone else. So by the time it gets to the editor's desk, then I feel like, well, the editor, if they see that issue, then the editor will bring it up and then we can address it then. But if they are fine with it, then I'm going to be fine with it too.
Have you had a favorite co-author so far? Are you allowed to say?
Hard because they're so different. I wrote a book with my dad, and I've written two with Angela, but those are both scripture, inspirational nonfiction, and and I've done a lot of anthologies with different authors. I think some authors you just kind of automatically connect with, and other ones it's just more business. So some of them kind of turns into your kind of friends, and you're going back and forth, and you end up talking about regular everyday stuff. And sometimes it's just you're just talking about sharing each other's marketing. So it's hard to say like a favorite. I mean, I've done just quite so much. I'd probably have to look at my books and remember some of them.
Remember, I kind of think you'd have to choose your dad as your favorite
Oh,
co-author.
for sure.
That's just kind of a given if it's a parent.
Yeah.
Too funny. Well, tell me one more thing. If you could meet any author, dead or alive, who would you pick?
Oh.
Oh, you just got to meet Lois Lowry just last weekend.
Yeah, that was really awesome. And I've met Anne Perry, and I've met Mary Higgins Clark, and those are two authors I've loved. And I would just love to. I mean, probably everyone says some of those authors like Jane Austen, but I digress. I would like to meet Maeve Binchy, and I think she's from Scotland. She's passed away now, but I read every single one of her books. And they were always they're kind of I don't have you ever read her? Do you know who she is?
I'm trying to think what title she would have written. The name sounds super familiar.
One is Circle of Friends, one is Tara Road. I'd have to like go back to my memory. But I just remember just reading her books and just feeling so connected to the characters. Like she does a whole stage full of characters. And so you're getting sometimes snippets of everyone's lives, but you get so involved in like the families. And I thought that was, and I don't know if I'd ever write like that, but it was really interesting. And just, I felt like I learned more about family dynamics by reading her. Because I just had a very just quiet, calm, traditional family. I didn't have really drama growing up, unless one sister stole another sister's curling iron, but which is kind of silly, but you know what I mean? It kind of opened my eyes to the world at large, where I was just in this little bubble, and reading her books helped me see all walks of life.
Wow. I think I've seen the movie of Circle of Friends, if she wrote that, but not read the book.
Yeah.
Is there a genre that you haven't written in that you would like to?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I think I just really have been drawn to mostly women's fiction. And I think because I feel like we all go through these journeys, and I love to read women's fiction, especially historical, but I like modern women's fiction. So I really think I'd just like to do more of that. Maybe some contemporary women's fiction. I haven't done I don't know. So The Healing Summer, that's set in the 80s. So that's about as contemporary as I've gotten with women's fiction. And I wouldn't mind maybe doing some more contemporary. The only challenge out there is I'm a fairly clean writer. I'm not squeaky clean, but most of women's fiction out there will be more gritty. And so if there's a home for the more mild women's fiction, then I'd be on board.
Yeah. Do you think you'd ever write a children's book?
Well, I have written children's books, but they've been denied and rejected.
Oh.
So I've written a couple little picture books, and it's been years and years, and I thought they're adorable, but the publishers didn't like them. And so I actually did one with an artist too. So I don't know, maybe I'd go back to it someday, but now that I have a grandbaby, he needs
Children now. I was going to say, how come you haven't indie published them?
I think it's just because I think the artwork is involved and but that's something that I could probably just come and get your advice on. I have your, oh, this would be funny.
Yay, you got the coloring book.
Coloring book. I like to color, so.
Oh, and that was a good one. The illustrator on that book was just so fantastic.
Yeah.
He did a great job.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing I wanted to ask you about is you're doing a kind of like a video podcast called Fiction in Real Life or something.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me more about that.
Oh, so this is another co-author situation. So Julie Daines, Jen Geigel-Johnson, and Jennifer Moore we all wrote a series called Romance on the Orient Express, just historical romances. And throughout that process, we just thought, okay, the books are out, but they all came out like, COVID years, which always is kind of hard to promote. And so we thought, well, what if we just do, and so we thought, well, should we write another series together? Should we, so we're all just in this big discussion. And we thought, well, even if we did another series together, we have a lot of books that are for the same target market. And we thought we could start like another author podcast. And like, well, there's so many out there that we didn't, and they're good. And we thought we don't want to just duplicate that because we probably don't have anything really new to add. And so we thought, well, what if we just do something that's fun and just kind of off the wall. And I think it was Julie Daines that kind of was a brainchild of the original idea. I can't remember how the conversation exactly went. And so the idea behind it is just twice a month, we do maybe a 15, 20 minute podcast. And we have, sometimes they're our own stories. Sometimes there's ones we research or readers submit stories, but we just share just kind of strange stories that are stranger than fiction. And then we decide just for fun, not like we really need more writing projects, but is this something we would write a book about or include in a book? So that just makes it that just brings in the author side of us. But otherwise it's just sort of a zany, short little podcast. And then we stream it to all our platforms. So it kind of becomes like kind of a marketing tool in a way, but in a very indirect way.
Yeah. What's the strangest one you've heard so far?
Oh, so I think this was like 2 episodes ago, and I actually was the one to share it, and then we'll like divide up who's sharing and who's hosting. And this was submitted by Taffy Lovell's husband. His name is Garth, and I'm trying to remember if I'm supposed to say names, but I just did. Anyway, so he used to be one of the managers, or I think he was like over a whole group of Walmarts. And so he told the story what happened in the Vernal Walmart, where a man had received a beautiful exotic parrot for Father's Day. And he walked into Walmart with it, guess to show it off because he was so proud. Well, the bird took off flying, and there's no way to stop it. It just flew and flew. And then it flew over to, I guess they have this kind of eatery or cafe, and it flew into a vat of boiling oil that was for the fries. Ooh. And anyway, they skipped it out, and it was flopping around, and they're trying to like figure out what to do. And then it goes back into something else. It wasn't the oil, but something else that ended up killing it. And so he said they had to shut down the whole cafe that day and like completely clean everything out and replace it. So it's a little bit of a tragic story, but it's just so off the wall. And so you're like, how, from beginning to end, how does this happen? It's such a fluke, such a just strange fluke. Did you
decide to write a book about it or no?
I can't remember if I said I would, but I don't know if I'd really want to write a book about it. If I was like, now that time has passed, no.
Yeah, that'd be sad, especially if it's someone's pet or. Right. It's funny. I'll have to tune into that one. I haven't heard it yet. I've seen it around, but I haven't listened yet.
We do have a YouTube page, so that's a good way if people want to just go and catch up on all of them.
Well, and Mara and Lynette both love it and says it's fun and funny. Good recommendations there. Do you ladies have any other questions for Heather, Mara, or Lynette? See how fast they can type.
Oh, I see that she's saying, "You look good. I'm glad you're doing better."
Oh yeah.
I definitely am glad you're doing better.
Thanks. It's been a long road. I'm glad to be back.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, do you have any other thoughts? Anything you want to leave your readers with, Heather?
Just that I just so appreciate Julie for doing this. It's always fun. I think we're used to doing videos now. I remember when we first started, I was like, oh, this is so hard. And now I have a camera and a little microphone that hopefully makes the sound and video a little bit better. But I got on your page and it looks like a really fun page. Like just once a month you do a book chat. So I definitely will be visiting more. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for being with us, Heather. I'm a big fan, as you well know, so I can't wait for
I'm a fan of you too.
Shadow of a Queen sounds so good, but just as Romance was good, I have to recommend it. I did recommend it. So
Awesome.
anyway, thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you all next month.
See you later.